It's nice being here, and I usually do have a question to you when I do start talks like this. It might be the case that this is your first conference that you are attending to, or maybe your second or your third, but I want to know from you, ask yourself one thing. What have you learned on conferences? What have you seen there? You have people that are explaining to you how to work with nodes, how to create transactions, how to make sure you are as private and as good in your OPSEC as possible. But what about mining? Have you learned something about it? You probably have seen all these booths down the road here of hosting your mining machines with them or purchasing the next mining device that they do offer. But what's in there? How does it work? What does it lack? And especially, what do they don't tell you? What I'd like to do today is to speak about these topics. Speak about decentralization, especially in one of the most important things, that is Bitcoin mining. And that is also one of the keen interests of mine, talking about it and explaining to you why we need decentralization in Bitcoin mining and what's the current state of it. I'm Clue. I'm one of the developers of the Bitaxe. You probably have heard about that. And if you didn't, no worries, I'll show you what it is. So let's start with a little bit of the backstory. I'd like to introduce to you Bitcoin. If you have never heard about it, I would be wondering. But there's a dream. Bitcoin opens dreams to the people, opens or gives you the dream of decentralization, having a peer-to-peer electronic cash system where nobody is in the middle and is controlling you. That is the dream that we do have with Bitcoin. And the best part about it is, back in 2009, it was published under a MIT license. You don't need to know what this is, but it explains that back in the days, it was published so that everybody can read it, everybody can understand it, everybody knows how it works. This is today lacking. This is no longer the case, and we will dive into that. One of the biggest issues that Bitcoin tries to solve, and I hope that most of you do know that, is the centralization that we have experienced with all these authorities. It might be the case that some of these authorities are okay or useful, but in general terms, have you tried purchasing something with your cash money that is worth more than 10K? It's probably a little bit harder to do that. Use your phone, do a Bitcoin transaction, here you go, nobody asks. Have you ever thought about what happens if you do go to the grocery store and try to purchase some goods? Do you know what kind of data has been stored about you? You probably use something like tokens, or I'm not talking about crypto and shitcoins, I'm talking about tokens in terms of reward tokens for purchasing goods, or payback points or something like that. What kind of data is stored about you? Why do you need that? Why don't have like a direct contact between you and me? We transact between each other and we do an exchange of a good or a service. That is what Bitcoin is offering to everybody. That is why it's there. And we do see that back in the days, 2008, 2009, we had the issue. We had a financial crisis, and it was born like a phoenix in the fire, I'd call it. It was a new thing that nobody knew about, and everybody was afraid. How does it work? Why should I use it? Well, you can go and read the white paper, then you know why. One of the essential parts about it is that mining is one crucial point of it. And as I explained earlier, these conferences here, even the BTC Prague, it might be a nice conference, but there are not that many people that are telling you how mining works. What are you using? And you might be thinking, well, I can't do mining. Mining is just something for the rich guys who have like facilities of megawatts of energy, and that's the only reason why they can mine and I am not. Well, I need to say, mining starts somewhere a little bit smaller, and we'll dive into that. One last thing that I'll try to give you before we start into the actual problem is Bitcoin, for me, is categorized into 3 pillars. I like to call it like a house with 3 pillars. The first one is the nodes. basically your database that you do have, where you store on your node that you run at home or in the cloud or somewhere else the data. Everything that is on the blockchain is stored in this node. The second pillar is the transactions. Transactions are created in order to exchange goods or whatever, and you need them. Transactions can't be created without the first pillar because nodes are needed for that. And nodes cannot exist without transactions. So you see there's a linking. And now we do have a third pillar, the mining pillar, that I'd like to call. It is basically the sorting of all these transactions. You send transactions into the network and they need to be aligned. They need to put into a block, how we call it these days, to visualize it for us humans being, that we do understand how the blockchain works. We organize them, put them into a block and send them into the network. So we go from mining is organizing the transactions. Transactions are needed for exchange and storage on the data, on the blockchain, and the nodes are basically the databases that need to work together with all these other pillars. If one of these pillars falls apart or is corrupted, the whole system will shut down. And this is something that is really important because it might be the case that the future is not as bright as you do think. Let's talk about the reality, how it currently looks. If you've never seen this chart, that's not a bad thing. This is pulled from mempool.space, a website where you can take a look on the blockchain, can take a look on how blocks are stored, how mining evolves over the years. And this right here is a chart that represents the growth of hash rate over the time being of Bitcoin's existence. What's interesting right here is that we do see there is a rise of mining devices and huge facilities. Industrial mining is a thing. And as I said earlier, sure, mining might be not as convenient to everybody as you do think. It's not possible to set up a huge farm at home in your, I don't know, in your basement or next to your living room. You don't want to hear the fans screaming, probably not. But what is really interesting about that is with the rise of technologies, increasement and involvement over the years, we've also seen the rise in industrial mining. Huge companies out there claim they do give you the option to host your mining device, to have it in their facility, and well, it's an attractive thing, but what does it actually create to the overall system? The miners are changing these days. And what do I mean by that? What we've seen with this rise of hash rate is that the long time preference that we are used to, or should be used to, is changing. Miners are these days only thinking about how can I make the next buck as quick as possible and do not lose too much money while burning energy. That's mostly the only concern that most of the miners do have. But as I explained earlier, without the pillar of mining, all the other pillars of the house will fall and the whole house will collapse. There are more than just there's more than just hash rate to it. There's also like mining pools, and we don't want to dive into that topic today. But mining pools are basically a convolute of all these devices snagged together to combine the hash rate to find the next block, which is these days needed. Finding a solo block on your own with one device or with multiple devices is very unlikely. That's the reason why they do exist. But we do see that even centralization of these pools will create issues for the network over time. So mining has evolved over the years from CPU usability over to GPUs, FPGAs, and these days on ASIC chips, application-specific integrated circuits, which is basically a nice term for, okay, it's a chip that can do only one single thing. And it's not bad. It is nice. It reduces the efficiency, or it increases the efficiency and reduces the power consumption that you do need to mine Bitcoin. The question that we need to ask ourselves is, how do we give it a legitimacy factor? How do we actually factor in legitimacy into mining? If you go out and you purchase yourself a mining device, do you know how this works? Do you know what's happening on this machine? I'd like to ask you really quickly and just give a hands up. Who of you knows how mining works? I love you. That's awesome. That's the most that I've ever seen in one room. That's nice. Usually it is a little bit lower. Not that many people do know how mining works. Mining itself is not a really complicated task, but what's really needed in this scene of mining is we need to be open, we need to be transparent, and we need to give back this knowledge to the community and to everybody who's trying to participate into it. Because only with knowledge will all these pillars survive. And if we do just trust on companies, things can happen. We've seen it, 2014, 2013, Endbleed, a backdoor in mining devices. Other backdoors in mining devices have existed, and people never knew about it until it was researched and published publicly, which is a really terrifying factor. So we need to make sure that no dark times are upon us, and that we do change the system, and that we make sure that mining stays open for everybody, and that we change the industry into open source again, so that everybody benefits from it. I'd like to introduce you one thing that the community that I'm from developed. It's called the Bitaxe. It might be the first step into a solution for what we're trying to achieve here. The Bitaxe is basically a mini home mining device, and I'd like to introduce you to it to give you an understanding of why it exists, what the idea of it is, and what we're trying to achieve with it. The Bitaxe itself is nothing groundbreaking. What we do use in it is a proprietary chip produced by Bitmain. But what we did is we reverse engineered how to use this chip, and we published and made everything open source about that. With that, what is it? It's a fully open source hardware mining device using one single ASIC chip. There are multiple versions of it, and we'll dive into that in just a second. But the most important fact about the Bitaxe device is it's developed from Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. It is from the community for the community. And why? Because it's fully transparent. You don't trust anybody out there, and you should not trust your mining device. So go out there, check out GitHub, and check out the code. Everything is there from the hardware to the software. Nothing is locked behind black doors or anywhere else. You can take a look on it. You can change it. You can modify it. You can do whatever you want with it. You don't like it, throw it away, get another one, or do whatever you want with it. You want to develop your own board? Do it. We incentivize you to do so. The Bitaxe should give the people more power, again, about the system. You might now ask yourself, well, why? I think that question is not really that hard. Seeing companies going out there and just trying to sell you to make the next buck is one thing. Being open and transparent about what's going on with the device, how to use it, what kind of software runs on it, that's accessibility, that's openness. And we need to make sure that education does not fall apart or fall back down on the steps leading into mining. Sure, some of you might want to have big mining facilities, that's totally fine. And eventually with open source, we'll also get there. There are so many things evolving in the background. But the most important part that we are trying to solve is we need to decentralize mining again. We have three big pools: Antpool and Friends, Foundry, and F2Pool or via BTC. These three pools control over 65% of the network hash rate. Ask yourself if you want to trust them. I don't. Now let's talk a little bit about the development of the Bitaxe. It's quite a funny story, I'd like to call it. Back in 2019, there was Scott, an American electronical engineer by training. He had the idea of, well, Bitcoin mining exists, I want to create something. I want to develop something. And he was quickly starting his idea of creating a mining device that he can use during the day. So he called it Day Miner. The idea was we have a plain PCB, the red one here, a plain PCB with a chip on it, and we can utilize it during the day. The issue with that was he was just faffing around, fuck around and find out. Well, it quickly turned out that it was not really working. It took him almost 2 years to get to the first prototype. And Then we realized, all right, we have the rough idea about what's going on with it, how to use it, but it was not quite working. So in January 22 was the next idea of, all right, maybe we need to just use more chips because these big machines use so many chips. Something must be around there. But it didn't work. And we had a couple of months went by and we tried another version, which sort of gave us a little bit more information about how to use the chip. This was a really intriguing process of getting used and making relationships with people all around the world, because he knew back in the days, okay, he's not gonna solve this alone. And nobody is gonna do such a thing on its own. So more and more people delved into this idea of this project, creating something that is truly open source. In October 22 then, quickly, it was basically the first kind of working prototype. We finally made it to a sort of state where it works, but we were not there where we want to be today. So October 22 was the first one sort of working device, but it was first of all ugly, and second of all not really user-friendly. So we needed to make sure to improve it even more. In January 23 was the first version of the Bitaxe Max, that's the very first version of the Bitaxe, born. It was a version which combines everything into one single board. You can just plug it into your power outlet and there you go, you can use it. Nothing else needed. All these previous versions, you needed to have some knowledge in technology, programming and other things. That was not really user-friendly. So until March 2023, it was not really a working prototype that you can give to a newbie or to a pleb or someone who doesn't know how mining works. But on March 2023, it was finally the case. We had it working, everything worked, and the very first version was born. The cool part about that is, it took quite a while. From 2019, with the initial idea of creating such a thing, to 2023 of actually bringing it to life and bringing it to the community, it was quite a hurdle. It was stressful. And at some point, I joined into it and I helped out and developed on it. So today, we have a whole ecosystem all around open source. It's not only tied to the Bitaxe. We are not stopping with just giving out to the public one device that you can use. No, we're trying to improve it. We're trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. There are different versions of everything. Multiple chip, single chips, beautiful screens, some RGB and other things. The cool part about it is it will never stop. And what rose of it was back in 2023 of March, the community called Open Source Miners United. A community that is completely decentralized. Behind Bitaxe is no company. There's no NGO. There is nobody behind this project. It is decentralized and based on the internet. We communicate through a couple of servers called Discord, where we can communicate over voice chat or text chat, and that's how it works. We use GitHub as our main repository to share all this information with everybody else. But the thing is, there's nobody backing that. The only thing that matters is the decentralized community. One thing that I'd like to point out here is, how did we get into this position? Why are we even here? Back in 2008, you were only able to mine Bitcoin with your CPU. You needed the Bitcoin software on your PC, period. There was no other way. Back in 2008, 2009, we got into GPU mining. The first version of the CG miner was written, CPU, GPU miner. Back in 2010, Slush Pool was born, the very first pool that we do know of. And really quickly, it evolved from GPU to FPGA to ASIC mining. We got from open source and sharing with everybody into something that is proprietary and only being used by a couple of companies who produce these chips and try to be the market leader into it. Back in 2019, the idea of the Bitaxe was born. It took us almost 3 to 4 years to actually create it. So what do we have? We have 11 years of closed source shit that everybody was using. That is not what we want to do. That is not what we should do. We need to change that. And what we are trying to do with this ecosystem that we are creating is we are trying to change the mind inside of the people. We need to make sure that people get it, that if you want to use Bitcoin as your monetary system, you need to make sure that these 3 pillars are under your control. You have the nodes, you need to control them. Your transactions, you need to control them. Don't trust anybody else with your transactions. Mining, don't forget about it. It's important and it needs to be open source. I hope you quickly read a couple of these code lines. There are some funny things in there. But apart from that, GitHub itself is the platform that we do use to host everything, to make sure that everybody can look at it. I do know, and everybody in our community also does know that, not everybody is capable of that. Not everybody can read code. That's okay, but we give you the option. If you don't know how to do that, you do have the option to learn that. We have educational classes, we have courses, everything free, open source, available to everybody. And if you then finally made it into an understanding on how to read code, you can come to GitHub, read it. Nothing is hidden in front of you. Everything is there from the hardware level to the software. We don't hide anything from you. And education is the only key to success. That's the reason why I'm here. That's the reason why I'm trying to tell you, you are not allowed to stop. You're not allowed to stop in thinking that mining is okay how it is these days. It needs to be changed. Otherwise, we'll quickly see that pools will rise, that pool payout mechanisms will fall into a category that are not really reliable for the future. And with that, I do think everybody does have a little bit of an empowerment. Bitaxe and the community behind it, Open Source Miners United, does give you this power. We are trying to force you a little bit into the stage of ask yourself, what do you know about it? What do you want to know about it? Why is it important to you? Bitcoin gives you this dream of an open system that is open source, but only on 2 pillars. What about the third? I told you earlier, in my understanding, Bitcoin falls apart if one of these 3 pillars is falling apart. And I do see mining is upon a stage where it becomes really, really critical. It might work for a while, but at some point, what happens next? Another backdoor in the mining software? We don't know. But before this happens, we need to change it. We need to make sure that direct participation from everybody who's evolved or involved in this system is able to do so. We don't want to stop there. And I do see we have a couple of developers in here from the Bitaxe project and others as well. So I'd like to give you a silent and private shout out. I don't want to point to anybody here. But that's the cool thing. The system that we built, the software, the firmware, the hardware, so many people are participating into that. I don't even know half of them. I've met 3 people in person, 4 people in person. That's it. We are roughly 15 maintainers when it comes to the software and 5 when it comes to the hardware. It is such a cool system to call yourself a truly decentralized system. I'm really proud about what we achieved, and I need to say thank you for everybody who's believing in us. I really can't stand it. It takes so much stamina and endurance to go through all of that and tell the people why it is needed that we change into something that is open source and don't just accept what is happening currently. A knowledge base is the key to success for us. And with that, I think the coolest thing that I read so far is this quote from Buckminster Fuller. The best way for us to predict the future is to create it. And with that, I think we can do that. I think we can change the system. I think we can finally increase not only the participation of everybody who's in Bitcoin and trust into that system that needs to be trusted. Only if we do work together, it will change. If you guys are interested now into looking into a couple of these things. We have so much knowledge to share. It's not stopping. It is just growing. We are just at the beginning. It took us years to get where we are now. We are now at the 5th revision of the Bitaxe. More are coming. Other projects are evolving. And we are not stopping of showing everything to you. We are willing to make sure you get the best education as possible, so you don't forget what mining is about. And nobody should ever forget what mining is about. The Bitaxe.org website is a quick representation of what this project is and what we do. My own page just gives you a quick overview about myself and what I do and why I think that Bitcoin needs to be a little bit more transparent when it comes to mining. And the GitHub link, look at it. Try it. With that, I thank you guys for listening, and I hope you enjoy and stay open and decentralized.
Secure your BTC Prague 2026 ticket at the lowest possible price now.